In today's world, mental health has become a global problem and has become so prevalent that more than 300 million people, 4.4% of the world's population, suffer from depression. This is indeed an alarming figure, which is reflecting the wider prevalence of mental ill health. It is estimated that mental health conditions will affect a staggering 1 in 4 people at some time in their lives.
Good afternoon, one and all. For today's interview, we have Diwakar, a psychology student, and Ayush, a pol science student, to share their views on mental health among adolescents. Here we are trying to compare Diwakar's theoretical opinions and Ayush's logical views on mental health. Hello guys, thank you for joining us here today. So Ayush, I'll start with you. Do you think depression is a major problem among adolescents nowadays?
I think depression is a problem among adolescents, especially now, because there are a lot of technologies and stuff. So people are always on their phone and they're not just talking to other people. And I think talking to other people is what lets you out express your feelings, right? So that people are not doing that, especially adolescents right now, because they just get on their phones or their laptops and they're just gaming or they're just not talking to people. So I think it is actually a problem.
Okay. Diwakar, what do you have to say about it?
I definitely agree with Ayush, but there is a catch here that it's not just about how adolescents have been engaging with the technology and how they've been spending the maximum time on laptops and all. It's just a general thing. Generally, the studies have shown that since the last 5 years, the mankind has been registering more cases of depression, and the levels of cortisol in the blood samples when studied have increased massively, which is the stress hormone. So it is happening due to a lot of underlying causes, but yes, this is one of the causes, and yes, it is a problem recently.
Okay. Ayush, as far as you know, do you think people are well educated about mental health and its effects?
I mean, people are slowly being educated, but I don't think it's there yet. We're not there yet. That not everyone knows about mental health. If you talk to our, especially our parents or a generation above them, they're not very aware of what a mental health exactly is, and it is really difficult to explain to someone what depression is, because they'll just say, "Oh, you're not just feeling good one day. It's okay. You can, sleep for the day and you'll be fine." But I don't think sleep for the day and be fine is like a real solution to it. So no, we're not at that level. Yes, in our generation, people are talking about mental health and everything, but in the older generations, it's not there yet, and lack of education in the rural areas. Also, it's one of the reasons that people are not aware about mental health.
Okay. Diwakar, do you think people are educated enough about mental health?
I believe it's a work in progress. As Ayush said, we're not there yet, but yes, a lot more people are educated than what they were 5 years ago. Like since the last few years, WHO and all the organizations that are considering human health as a whole are actually taking the psychological aspect of being healthy, and that's why the World Mental Health Day, 10th October, is being celebrated these days. And in India also, the government is pushing on strategies and techniques which will push our society towards a better education about the mental health, and it will definitely create a better outlook, but it's still a work in progress. A lot of work has to be done. People are not totally aware yet.
Okay. As you know, COVID-19 has caused a lot of damage this past year. Do you think it has affected the mental health of students also?
Yeah, the isolation period. I mean, for people especially who couldn't go to their hometowns, or obviously they couldn't visit schools and colleges because it was all closed during the lockdown. So if you're looking at that kind of those people, then they're just isolated into one room, and they don't have a lot of communication. And I think there was this viral video on social media about a guy explaining about how he feels. It was just an acting thing, but he tried to explain really well that there is a lot of communication that needs to happen. We humans are social animals, so there should be communication, right? If there is no communication, and lockdown period was basically it was just cutting us off. Yeah, there were online classes, but honestly it didn't really feel like we were attending classes anyway. So that was, a problem, and I think COVID-19 was a challenge for all the people around the world.
Okay. Diwakar, do you feel the same about it?
Yeah, he's basically told all the right things, and he's absolutely right about the fact that COVID has vastly affected our mental health. Because not only people were anxious about a disease that was spreading at such a huge rate. COVID is a really infectious disease, and it spread it at like this, and the whole world was infected, and hence the element of anxiousness was already there. And then when the lockdown came in, people didn't have anybody to talk to. Humans are social animals, as he suggested, and our existence depends on how well we bond socially. And cutting off that social connection with our peers, with our colleagues, that definitely affects a person's psychology to move more towards the overthinking. Just imagine yourself lying in the bed at the night when you have nothing to do. What do? You overthink. People overthink. Why? Because they're alone at that time, and hence we had a lot of time to overthink, which negatively affected our psychology. And as I believe, yeah, COVID has affected.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. Ayush, to what extent do you think this critical society affects the mental health of the students?
Well, we have all had relatives who've come up to us and said, engineering kar lo beta, bahut scope hai. It just adds to the pressure. It's just more pressure on a student. Think he wants to not pursue engineering, but then let's say a relative's son is really doing well at that field. So, your parents would want you to, they obviously want the better for you, whatever is good for you, but at the same time, they don't understand the fact that, a person should do whatever he or she feels is good for them, right? That way he'll be dedicating more towards that thing. But here, there is the society that stands in the way, and it just adds to pressure. Even if you're talking about school-going children, right? They go to a function, and there'll be one random relative who will pop out of nowhere and be like, "Beta, table so now." And for someone who is not really interested or too much into maths and stuff, he or she will just feel himself cornered, and that will affect their mental health, and that can have an adverse effect on whatever they choose in their lives or whatever decisions they make or how they live. So yeah, it does have a huge impact.
Diwakar, do you agree to this?
Partially yes, partially yes. While I do agree that criticism sometimes can be something that puts down a person's uh, ability to think great about himself or herself, and the ability to realize that he is worth something. Humans, we as a species, not just humans, any species, there are theories of coexistence that show that competition is one of the most prominent ways in which a species develops. Natural competition is something that we see every day in every ecosystem around us, and humans also do need some positive criticism to develop. Studies in psychology have showed that without proper criticism, a child's cognition development cannot happen properly. So yeah, it is important, but then again, it's more towards our society. Issues like fat shaming, issues like homophobia, and issues like women empowerment. Like women empowerment is something really positive, but then there are people who are opposing it at a massive rate, and they don't even have any context to it, and it just works both ways. When people start putting someone down based on something that a person doesn't have control on, it just affects a person's psychology really adversely. And all these issues are a part where our society is not really a good critique, but then again, we need a society which is a critical society.
I think
to
Diwakar wants
develop.
to. I think good criticism, constructive criticism.
Yeah,
There has to
what
be
is-
balance. There has to be balance. We need both the sides for our survival, and that balance needs to be maintained, which is not being maintained. That's the problem.
Okay, so Ayush, what do you think we can do to make students open up and share their problems?
I think counseling sessions, and so I think a child will open up only if he's done that throughout his life. So you should start from grassroots levels. School going children, you should have counselors at schools. there's a lot of bullying and all these added pressures that you talked about the society being critical. So all these things are there in a child's head, and he or she is not able to express all this properly. So if this is done at school level and at college, even colleges and workplaces, then it will just help people be more expressive from like the start, and that will just help them to not fall into depression or any of these mental illness problems, right?
Okay. Diwakar, do you share the same opinion?
Yeah, I do. But it also depends how far a person, an individual. Okay, like there are parts of personalities that just cannot be influenced or changed by a person's surrounding environment. A person's behavior and his cognition develops throughout his developmental periods, and there are studies by like mass like big names in the psychological field like Erik Erikson, Sigmund Freud. They have given theories of how a child's cognition develops from a really small age and towards his death. Like this whole process, we humans develop our behavior throughout the time we live, and that's why it all depends on how it started in the root. So if we want to develop a society where children are open about their problems, where children and people, when they grow up, they can actually talk about their problems and they are ready to face it, we have to make sure that every single individual's development is happening in the right way. And for that, we have to educate the parents, we have to educate the society on how to go about the process. So yeah, that's the way. And the current condition is not really good. People are not really aware of what they want to talk about, to be honest.
Yeah.
If a person is having a trouble focusing on things and he's like really confused in life, people just like he's a confused personality, they don't think it can be ADHD. So they just don't have the education about it. So like that's the hurdle there.
Okay. Diwakar, what are your thoughts on the school and college counselors?
School, college. Okay, so a post of a counselor is something which is required in every sector of our economy. It can be a school, it can be a company, it can be industry. You need a counselor because a counselor basically keeps in check that a process or a task is being undertaken while the people undertaking the task are under the right mindset and the right people are being hired. But then again, it's only effective if the appointed counselors are chose according to the guidelines which are set up by the like the various psychological associations which are empowered internationally and by WHO. If the hiring process of a counselor is proper, if a counselor meets all the requirements that he or she should be meeting, then yes, it is a really important asset one can have. But like right now, it's just an issue which is under the shadows. We have counselors at school who are not even educated about the proper psychological processes or the common disorders that might be there. So it needs more awareness, and the government needs to put more filters in that process so that people actually have working and effective counselors and not just random people sitting and hogging up the salary. That's it.
Okay. Ayush, do you think counselors are helpful enough?
I think yes, obviously counselors are helpful enough, but as Diwakar suggested, if they're not qualified enough, they might be dealing with something that they don't understand, and if they are doing that, and if it is done in the wrong way, it might just just destroy the child, destroy the mental health that he has. So I think it is really important that counselors are properly qualified. As he said, I don't really know a lot about the psychological associations, but I mean, if there are like associations like these, then I think they should be having a regulatory guidelines as to how to hire a counselor or what are the criteria for being a counselor. So I think proper regulation and organization of this whole thing can help a lot of students and a lot of people all around the world.
Okay, thank you so much guys for giving
you.
us your time and sharing your opinions. It was very informative for us. I hope it is for others as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Thank you so much.
Before we end this video, we have a small advice for the people who are suffering silently. You don't have to go through this alone. Pay attention to anything you try to hide. Reach out to people because there is hope, even when your brain tells there isn't. Believe in yourself because you are more precious to the world than you think you are. A beautiful man once said, "The sun will rise again. No darkness, no season will last forever." Thank you.